Hi guys and welcome to Strength Universe. During his era, Louis Cyr was referred to as the strongest man on earth. In the 100 years or so that have preceded his death, his contemporaries have tried and usually failed to match his feats of strength, leading to Cyr reaching legendary status and being called the strongest man to ever live. But was he really? Stay tuned to find out as I look at Cyr's feats of strength and try to place them in the context of the modern strength athlete. Louis Cyr was born Cyprien Noy Cyr on the 10th of October 1863 in Quebec, Canada. At birth he weighed an incredible 18 pounds and was the second child of 17 siblings. While his father was of a normal stature, his mother stood 6 foot 1 inches tall and weighed 265 pounds, making her the same height and a similar weight to Larry Wheels. Cyr left school at 12 years old and started to work in a lumber camp where he discovered his exceptional strength at a very young age, after impressing his fellow workers with his feats of strength. In 1878, the Cyr family immigrated to Lowell, Massachusetts. There, 15-year-old Cyprien Noy Cyr changed his Christian name to Louis, as it was easier to pronounce in English. Over the following 3 years, he worked in a textile mill, on a farm and in a machine shop. Cyr's first professional strongman competition occurred in 1881, after his family returned to Quebec. There, at 18 years old, he won the unofficial title of Canada's strongest man by lifting an unwieldy 480-pound granite boulder off the ground. The following year, Louis married Melina Comtois. He worked as a lumberjack and acquired a few dumbbells and barbells to become even stronger. In the spring of 1883, Cyr and his wife returned to Lowell, where on the third Sunday of May, in the backyard of a Suffolk Mills factory, a now 19-year-old Cyr lifted a huge stone from the ground to his shoulder in front of a gathering of hundreds of people. So impressed were the witnesses of Cyr's feat of strength that the stone was moved by 6 men to Oliver Cadet's general store, where it was weighed at an unbelievable 517 pounds. Hoping to capitalise on his fame, a tour of the Maritimes was organised, and while it may have benefited the organiser, Cyr gained no profit financially. He then began touring Quebec with his family. Soon proving his immense strength, he was urged by friends to enter the exciting, albeit precarious world of professional strongmen. With little reward coming from his early foray into professional weightlifting, Cyr accepted a job as a policeman in early 1885. Despite the fictional stories that you may have read, the reality is that Cyr resigned from the job later that year, after he and a fellow officer were assaulted. Looking for a safer career, Cyr went on a tour arranged by the promoter Gustave Lambert. With this change in life, he finally began to enjoy financial success. In 1988, Cyr used some of this money to purchase a tavern in Montreal, where he would perform feats of strength to amuse his customers. One of Cyr's most spectacular feats of strength took place in 1891 at Summer Park, Montreal, where before a crowd of 10,000 awestruck onlookers, he held the full might of 4 1,200-pound draft horses. News of this feat spread around the globe. Among those who heard of Cyr's outstanding stunt was Richard K. Fox, publisher of the National Police Gazette. Later, the two men met in New York City, after which Fox promoted Cyr, offering $5,000 to anyone who could match his outstanding feats. On the 18th of January 1892, Cyr, who was now known as the Canadian Samson, was in London. His intention was to establish official records, therefore his lifts were carefully weighed by experts. There he did a one-hand push press with a 273-pound dumbbell, and performed a one-arm partial deadlift using his right middle finger with a weight of 535 pounds. Returning home from England, Cyr, with his fellow Canadian strongman protege Horace Barry, signed a 1-year contract with the Ringling Brothers Circus. In 1894, the two organised their own touring company, which consisted of 35 athletes, jugglers, acrobats and strongmen. The Cyr Barry Circus entertained on Canadian and American stages and fairgrounds for the following 5 years. Within that period, Sear was considered to have been at his peak and was recorded by Dr. Dudley A. Sargent of Harvard University of standing 5'8.5" tall and weighing 291 pounds, with other measurements listed as a 20-inch neck and biceps, a chest of 60 inches when expanded, and a waist of 47 inches. During this time, he would set several unofficial records. The most famous took place in Boston on the 27th of May 1895, when he did a backlift of 4,337 pounds. He performed a crucifix hold with 97 pounds in his right hand and 88 in his left, and he is stated to have done a hand and thigh lift similar to a partial deadlift of 1,897 pounds. While in Montreal on the 25th of March 1901, Sear wrestled the giant Edward Beaupré, who at 8'3" was the tallest strongman to have ever lived, although despite the difference in height, both men weighed around 365 pounds. Sear is said to have won the match easily, although it is reported that Edward was suffering from tuberculosis. By 1904, Sear's lifestyle and especially his overeating and drinking began to take their toll. Now weighing close to 400 pounds with failing health, he developed a kidney ailment which left his legs temporarily paralysed. Despite the severity of his ailment, he recovered and in 1906 agreed to a strength contest with Hector de Kerry, a smaller but more physically fit Canadian strongman. The setting for the event was Summer Park, Montreal, where the competition ended in a tie with each man winning 4 of the 8 events. Although Sear was not defeated by de Kerry, he announced his retirement and declared that de Kerry was the world's strongest man. Louis Sear died in his daughter's home of kidney failure on the 10th of November 1912. He was 49 years of age but had endured heart ailments and lengthy bouts with asthma. But was Louis Sear really the strongest man to have ever lived? And to answer that, we start by looking at Sear's crucifix with 97 pounds in his right hand and 88 in his left, for a total of 185 pounds. Sear's record appears to have been broken twice during the 1950s, firstly by bodybuilder Marvin Eder, who performed a 200-pound crucifix at less than 200 pounds in body weight, and then in 1954 by the former Olympic weightlifter and strongman Doug Hepburn, who claimed to do a crucifix hold with a combined weight of 220 pounds. Given that steroids were not available in the US until after 1957, it's quite possible that both these men were natural. If this were the case, Sear's crucifix record stood from 1896 until 1953, a total duration of 57 years. It was in 1883 when a 19-year-old Louis Sear lifted a boulder weighing 517 pounds from the ground to his shoulder. It wouldn't be until the 29th of June 2008 when Derek Poundstone lifted a replica stone weighing 530 pounds. However, the replica was only lifted to a platform, not his shoulder. Derek was 27 years old at that time and almost certainly using performance-enhancing drugs. Thus, no one has successfully matched Sear's feat of strength. In 1892, Sear lifted a 273-pound dumbbell from the ground to his shoulder with 2 hands, before pressing the dumbbell overhead in a side press. The first record that I could find of Louis' record being broken was by Victor Delamere, who did a side press at 310 pounds in 1914. Around 1957, the former Olympic weightlifter Paul Anderson performed a side press of 380 pounds. Sear's record stood from 1892 until 1914, for a total duration of 22 years. In 1895, Sear did a backlift of 4,337 pounds, made up of a platform weighing 500 pounds that was laden with 18 men of an estimated weight of 211 pounds each. However, these men were not weighed. Either way, Sear's record seems to have been broken several times. Firstly in 1925 when it was claimed that Victor Delamere performed a backlift of close to 7,000 pounds. However, there seems to be no evidence to support this. In 1957, Paul Anderson was awarded a Guinness World Record for doing a backlift of 6,270 pounds, but following controversy surrounding the lack of evidence, the record was subsequently removed. Finally, in July 1993, Greg Ernst was awarded a Guinness World Record for performing a backlift of 5,340 pounds. The limited information that's available would appear to indicate that Louis' record stood from 1895 until 1925, a total time of 30 years. The final lift that I could compare directly is Sears' single finger deadlift that he performed in 1892 when he pulled 535 pounds with his right middle finger. In February 2022, Steve Keller, a martial artist from the UK, was awarded Guinness World Record for performing a deadlift with his right middle finger of 285.5 pounds. So in theory, Sears' record still stands as of today, a total of 131 years later. Sear performed many other lifts that were referred to as world records and still stand today, and there's little doubt that he was probably the strongest man of his era. But I think it's hard to conclude that the duration of these records demonstrate that he was the strongest man to ever live. The reasons for this is that many of Sears' lifts were not verified and some are even said to have been exaggerated. But more important is the fact that the majority of his feats of strength were very niche, which means that there was a tiny number of competitors who have ever attempted them. The popularity of niche feats of strength faded quickly in the years that preceded Sears' death, as weightlifting evolved through the standardisation of lifts, rules, equipment and judging criteria that has meant that everyone competes on a level playing field. That brings me towards the end of the video, but please leave a comment letting me know what you think of Sears' feats of strength and whether he was the strongest man to ever live. Finally, I'd like to thank you for watching the video and hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please take the time to hit like, leave a comment and subscribe for more. Thank you.